Hey there, my name is Phil Desrochers. Thanks for checking out my presentation for the 2020 NASPA Virtual Conference. My presentation is titled The Association Between the Functional Gait Assessment and Spatiotemporal Gait Parameters in Individuals with Obesity Compared to Normal Weight Controls. So as we all know, obesity continues to be a significant health crisis, both at a global scale and in the United States where we are. So in addition to being associated with numerous and wide-ranging health risks, including increased incidence of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, musculoskeletal problems, obesity is also associated with impairments in movement and gait. So work from our lab and others has shown that for individuals with obesity, they tend to take shorter and wider steps. They walk with reduced velocity and often have altered temporal gait characteristics, such as reduced single stance time and increased dual stance time, keeping both feet on the floor for a longer period of time inside the gait cycle. And many of those features can be observed here in these videos of a normal weight control participant and a person with obesity walking on a treadmill in our lab. So a lot of these changes in gait result in significant changes in gait biomechanics, as well as elevated risk of tripping and falling in people with obesity, with as much as a 12 to 31% increase in fall incidence, as well as an 18% increase in the incidence of ambulatory stumbling. So the objective of this study was to use an affordable, efficient method to assess gait and balance impairment in individuals with obesity compared to controls of healthy weight. So the idea here is that such a tool could be used to evaluate gait and balance impairment in a wide array of settings, both clinical and research settings, and also to be used to investigate how movement impairment might be related to other factors and risks associated with obesity. So we had 14 individuals with obesity that were recruited from the Boston Medical Center who were scheduled to undergo bariatric massive weight loss surgery. We also had 20 people of healthy weight that were recruited to serve as a control group. So we asked our participants to do two tasks. The first was the Functional Gait Assessment, which is a measure of gait and balance that's validated in other populations such as older adults and people with movement disorders. So the FGA consists of 10 tasks which subjects perform, and the experimenter rates their proficiency on a 4-point scale. In the second task, participants were asked to walk along a pressure-sensitive walkway that tracked the spatiotemporal characteristics of their gait. Participants performed 5 walks in each of 5 blocks. The first block involved an initial baseline block in which they walked on flat ground. In the next 3 blocks, an obstacle of varying heights were placed halfway down the walkway, and participants were asked to step over the obstacle as they proceeded down the walkway. These obstacles were designed to simulate heights of various everyday objects that they might encounter, and the blocks were counterbalanced across participants. Finally, participants again walked across 5 trials across flat ground. So we first examined whether our groups differed on the functional gait assessment. And we found that indeed, the group with obesity had significantly lower total score on the FGA. They also achieved lower scores on all of the individual items of the FGA, and using Fisher's exact tests, these differences were significant for all of the items with the exception of walking with vertical head turns and climbing stairs. We then wanted to examine the spatiotemporal gait characteristics as participants walked across the gait carpet. We found a bunch of differences between the groups on several gait parameters, but I'll highlight a couple cool ones that we found here. So we found robust differences between the groups in measures of gait velocity, single limb support time, double limb support time, and cadence. Additionally, we also found that these measures changed across the varying obstacle heights. So participants in both groups walked slower, spent more time in single limb support, less time in double limb support, and had slower cadence across increasing obstacle sizes. Finally, we wanted to examine whether poor FGA scores were associated with changes in spatiotemporal gait characteristics in individuals with obesity. So I'll highlight a couple interesting results we found here. In their gait velocity, we found that participants, when they were walking across flat ground, there was no association between their FGA score and their gait velocity. However, once we asked them to walk across the tall obstacle, we did find a significant relationship between their score and their gait velocity. So our results showed that those individuals with worse FGA scores crossed the obstacle with a slower velocity. So some conclusions we can draw from this research. First, the functional gait assessment successfully captures gait impairments in individuals with obesity. Second, that for people with obesity, poor FGA scores were associated with a slowing of gait when they encountered obstacles, but not flat ground walking. So the FGA might represent a simple and affordable method of assessing gait impairment in both clinical and research settings, and that the presence of obstacles and other gait constraints may be helpful in revealing meaningful gait impairments for people with obesity. So thanks for checking out my presentation, and have a great rest of your conference.